we doing, everyone? Welcome back to everything we know about Guild Wars 2 Path of Fire. Now, in this episode, we're going to be going over the Engineer and the Holosmith, which we all thought that the Engineer was going to be Mace, but it is actually using Sword. So if you're curious about any of the other classes, there will be a playlist linked on screen, roughly about right now, somewhere on screen. You can click that, and you can see whichever class you would like to take a look at. This is going to be the 5th installment that we've done so far. We've looked at Mirage Mesmer, Deadeye Thief, Spellbreaker Warrior, and Scourge Necromancer. Now, Scourge Necromancer and Holosmith actually kind of have something in common, but we're going to be going into that in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and hop in to the Holosmith, shall we? Now, this video is probably going to be extremely long. If it goes kind of over 20 minutes, I'll probably chop it up a bit. But that's because I have access from one of my friends. I have access to every single engineer ability at the moment. It's got the entire trait list, all of the skills. I have everything. So we're going to be going over the entire thing. And it could take a little while, but buckle in, boys. Alright. Okay, so starting us off, we're going to start off with the sword abilities. So for the sword auto attack, we've got Sun's Edge into Sun Ripper and then Gleam Saber. Now, this is an attack chain, obviously. Strike your foe and inflict vulnerability. This attack gains additional crit chance based on your heat level. Now, the heat level's got a lot of different things. It's got a threshold of some kind, which I'm not entirely sure about. But I'm going to think of it as a 0 to 100 number, alright? So that's how I'm going to kind of think of it. It may be different in practice, but it'll be the best way to kind of explain the way I feel everything's probably going to work. So that's the sword auto attack. Now we only have 3 abilities on the sword because it is the main hand. Then you'll have the offhand shield or pistol if you'd like to. You can probably do sword pistol, I would presume. But number 2, we've got Refraction Cutter, which strike at foes in front of you and launch a blade of light at your target. Launch extra blades based on your heat level. Each blade inflicts conditions. Alright. So, I assume there's going to be, for the most part, I believe there's going to be heat tiers with these abilities. So think like adrenaline tiers for Warrior. The higher the adrenaline cost you spend, the more damage it does, unless it's the Great Sword, because no one likes the Great Sword, apparently. And Arcing Slice no longer scales with adrenaline, etc., etc. Yeah, I'm rambling on a little bit. But, yeah, so I figure that it's probably going to be like, there's a heat threshold of probably 25, and then, so 25, 50, 75, all do different things, and then at 100 you're overloaded and you explode, which is the minor trait is that you explode. So that's kind of the way I'm going to be thinking of the heating system. I may be wrong in reality, but that's just kind of the best way to make it all make sense. So for each heat level it shoots out an extra blade. So 0 it'll shoot 1 blade, 25 it would shoot 2, 3, 4, etc. I don't know the cap on it, that doesn't say, sadly. But each blade will inflict conditions. We don't know which conditions, we just know conditions. And then for 3, we've got Radiant Arc, which is leap to your target and create an arc of light that strikes nearby foes. Gain quickness based on your heat level. Now it's going to be quickness time, I presume. So on 0 heat, it'll be like, I don't know, 1.5 seconds, and then 2, 3, 4. You kind of see where this is going to be going for the most part. That's going to be rounding out the sword, as it is only the 3 abilities because it's just the main hand weapon. Alright, so now I'm going to go into the Holosmith, or the Holo Forge, I believe it's called. Photon Forge, that's what it is. I'm going to go into those abilities, and then after that, we're going to make our way down to the utility and the healing, and then we go down to the traits to round us out, so we kind of know what everything is, and then we reach the traits, and we can see some of the synergies. So into the Photon Forge, the auto attack is a standard auto attack chain. However, the last hit cleaves through all foes in front of you and hits twice. Now the second ability is going to be Holo Leap, which create a holographic, sorry, words are hard, launch pad and leap to your foe, and this pad will, god, words are really hard. The pad remains behind for a short duration, grants increased movement speed to allies who touch it. So I assume it's going to be like, if you go to Quaddle, I think it is, then you can take the little launch pads and that sort of thing and jump around. But I think it's going to be something like that, except like a wall of reflection or something. But you run through it, you get move speed, that sort of thing. That's what I'm assuming with that. Could be wrong. We'll see how it plays out. And then for number 3, we've got Corona Burst, which strike nearby foes and begin to store up energy, gaining boons and heat each pulse. After charging, the energy explodes, inflicting conditions on nearby foes. That's going to be interesting, that's for sure. We don't know which conditions, and we don't know which boons we gain either. So, our 4th ability is going to be Photon Blitz, which is fire multiple piercing blasts at your target. This is, long story short, the unload from Pistol Pistol Thief, but it's been put onto Engineer. Now, the thing about Holosmith is it's kind of got some to do with Scourge, which is kind of weird, because they've essentially put a Necro Shroud on Engineer, and then if you look at Scourge Necro, they've put Tool Belt on Necromancer, which is kind of a really cool interaction. But, I mean, if you're a fan of Tool Belt on Necro, then there you go. Personally, I would have preferred to keep the Death Shroud there, instead of, for whatever reason, giving it to Engineer. I don't know if it actually gives a full, like, a barrier or bonus health or anything like that. I don't know about that, but it is kind of cool how it's kind of like a Death Shroud, and the Necro kind of has a Tool Belt. So, into the 5th ability for the Photon Forge, we have Holographic Shockwave, which create a deadly shockwave that launches foes upwards. This attack always deals a critical hit. And that's going to round us out for the Photon Forge abilities. So now moving down to the slot skills is going to be healing and utility skills. There's a ton of utility skills. Oh, they're tool belt skills, my bad. Okay, that makes more sense. Alright, so looking at the healing, we have Coolant Blast. They have Exceed skills, which I don't really know what that means, but still. That's the skill type. So, Coolant Blast is going to heal yourself and chill nearby foes. If you are above the heat threshold when the skill is activated, gain Frost Aura and continue healing for the duration. As I said beforehand, I assume the heat threshold for this is probably going to be like 25, most likely. And it's on a 20-second cooldown, so it recharges pretty fast. They kind of have to keep the 20-second cooldown if they want to keep it relevant, because of course Healing Turret is also 20 seconds, I believe. It may be 25, but Healing Turret is exceptional. So, the Tool Belt skill for it is going to be Cauterize, which use a laser to burn off conditions, and set yourself on fire for each condition removed. Removes additional conditions if above the heat threshold. So, remove conditions, but then set yourself on fire. Okay, that's kind of counterintuitive, but cool at the same time. So, that's just fun all around. Don't really know if it's that practical, but you can remove a ton of condition burst and replace it with a very small amount of damage. So I'll take it. I'll probably still use Healing Turret were I to play Engineer. I mean, I do like the idea of this. I don't know how much it heals for though, but Healing Turret does seem like something a little bit better without that downside of the Tool Belt skill. Alright, then going down to utility, we've got Spectrum Shield, which breaks stun effects and create a holographic shell that reduces incoming damage. Alright, that's pretty good. This skill recharges faster, well above the heat threshold. I do like the sound of this heat mechanic, honestly. It's something to kind of micromanage that you can actually make go down as well, which is through dodge rolling, because you can kind of, a lot of classes now seem to make dodge rolling offensive, which is a little bit weird, but I kind of like it. They first started it off with Daredevil, and now they're putting it into 2 other classes, which is pretty cool. It's kind of working into the class and adding more flavor to it. So yeah, you can break stun effects with that, and it's essentially Bulwark Gyro, for the most part, is what it looks like. Because of course you can't run Scrapper, so you can't have Bulwark Gyro, so they put something in to replace it instead for the Holosmith. And then the Tool Belt skill is going to be Flash Spark. Release a blinding burst of light from your holographic emitter, while above the heat threshold, gain a Light Aura. Now, I think Light Aura is already in the game. I'm not entirely sure about that, because I've never seen it before. So that's new, I think. Don't quote me on that. Not entirely sure. But yeah. So the next skill is Hard Light Arena. So create a holographic arena that grants you boons while you are inside of it. When activated above the heat threshold, the radius and duration are increased. Alright, bonus boons in a specific area, so I will take that. However, that can be countered by Winds of Disdainment from the Spellbreaker, which will just completely remove the ability to gain boons while you're inside that, so nice bit of counterplay there. Prismatic Singularity is the tool belt skill, which collapse a ring of holograms to pull foes into a single point. The ring explodes when it fully collapses. Radius and pull distance increase to well above the heat threshold. Alright, that's interesting. So what I'm thinking with that is a ring of holograms. Okay. But if you can choose where it pulls them to, like say it'll target the person that you're targeting and then pull them to wherever you put your cursor, I can see that setting up exceptionally with Toolkit. So you pull them with this, they get pulled back, they're knocked down, and they can't do anything, and then you pull them with the magnetized Toolkit, and as a result you can get a massive pull from really long range, which would be pretty good for like people who are escaping you in PvP. That's what I'm kind of thinking at the moment, which that's if that's the way it works, that's pretty damn cool. Alright, and then the next skill is Laser Disc. Create a rotating laser blade, or rotating laser blades to damage nearby foes. This skill has increased duration when activated above the heat threshold. Alright, that's cool. That's going to remind me of the Revenant Jealous Whirling Hammers. That's what I think that's probably going to be. Except it's going to actually be maybe viable. As much as I'd like to play Jealous Revenant just because it's cool, its damage on Whirling Hammers is less than adequate. So, alright, and then we've got next is Photon Wall. Oh, nope, I missed one. Blade Burst is a tool belt skill. Fire holographic blades at foes within range. Damage increased while over the heat threshold. Alright. And then next skill is Photon Wall. This is going to be the last one, I believe. No, I think there's one more. But, okay. So, Photon Wall is a defensive barrier appears in front of you that blocks you and your allies from incoming attacks. Reactivate Exceed to fire the barrier at foes as an attack. I can't read. This skill grants projectile reflection if you are above the heat threshold. Alright, so you can make a barrier and then you can actually send it out to do damage. However, I wouldn't really be... Well, actually, no, that could be pretty good. Because that reminds me of Wall of Reflection. But instead of it just sitting there because you put it in the wrong spot, you can send it out to do damage and put it back on its cooldown, most likely. That's pretty good. So if you put your Wall of Reflection in the wrong spot, you can just kind of throw it out and deal damage with it instead of just leaving it there to do nothing. That's cool. And then we have Launch Wall for the last one. Launch your Photon Wall forward, causing the wall to explode when it strikes a foe, inflicting conditions on nearby enemies. When fired above the heat threshold, launch additional walls. Okay, I don't really know what that's gonna look like, but that's kind of cool. Okay, and then for Elite, we have Prime Light Beam. So charge up and fire an explosive beam in front of you. When activated above the heat threshold, this attack leaves behind a burning holographic field. Alright, that's a 60-second cooldown, so pretty fast on the cooldown if I'm going to be honest. And then the tool belt skill is to engage and deactivate your Photon Forge. Going into Photon Forge disables the use of kits for a short duration. I don't know what it means by for a short duration. Like, are kits not usable for like 5 seconds, or can you not use kits while the entirety of Photon Forge is active? That's kind of a bit weird. If it's just for a short duration, then why do it, you know? But yeah, gain access to new skills, generate heat while Photon Forge is active, and then deactivate it to cancel and begin cooling after a delay. Cooling effectiveness increases over time. Okay, so your Photon Forge will cool down faster as time goes on. That's pretty cool. Alright, now we make our way down to the traits. So we've got the Minor Adept trait, which is Photon Projector. Photon Forge replaces your Elite Tool Belt skill. Gain access to Exceed skills. Alright, that's just giving you Photon Forge. And then Major Adept, which Photon Forge reduces incoming damage but has increased passive heat generation. Alright, that's pretty good. So in PvP, this is probably going to be a lot better than in PvE, I think, because reducing incoming damage, but it makes it harder for you to stay in Photon Forge. So in PvP, you're not going to be in Photon Forge for the longest amount of time, but I feel like PvE, is going to revolve around keeping Photon Forge up for as long as possible. So more passive heat generation makes it a lot harder to kind of stay in your Photon Forge. However, if you're PvEing, you're not really going to want to be coming out of Photon Forge. You're going to want to try and stay in it for as long as humanly possible. So more passive heat generation will make it harder to do that and maintain your optimal point of DPS. So up next we have Prismatic Converter, which deactivates Photon Forge, converts conditions into boons based on your heat level. Now, I don't really know why you would want to be deactivating it other than because of the explosion that happens if you hit your heat cap. But your goal is going to be to kind of stay in there for as long as possible in PvE, I think, and trying to get the most out of it in PvP. You're probably going to be deactivating it in PvP though, so I could see that coming in pretty good and allowing you to stop a lot of condition burst. So I will not argue with that. A bit more Condi removal for NG, although it already has a ton, but still. And then the next one, the last major adept, we have Solar Focusing Lens. Your first few attacks after entering Photon Forge burn. This bonus is also granted if you overheat. Now, this bonus is also granted if you overheat. I don't know if that just makes it so your next few auto attacks burn, or if the explosion burns. I'm not entirely sure on that. By the sounds of it, I would assume it's just your next few attacks after you overheat would burn. So that's what I'm going with, and that's what I'm assuming. Alright, so next we've got a minor master, which is Heat Therapy. Gain health per unit of heat lost. This trait does not function while cooling due to an overheat. Okay, this is due to an overheat, I see. So with this, when you lose your heat, you're going to get healed. So the thing is, I'm not entirely sure if that just gives you a bonus like hot while you turn it off. If you can see what I mean. So you'll heat up to like 75. At 100, you know you're going to explode. You have no other way to get rid of your heat, so you turn the Photon Forge off. And then as it starts cooling down back to 0, it heals you per unit lost, right? So are you just getting ticked from that 75 down to 0 point? Are you just getting healed that entire time? Because that would be kind of a lot, unless this is healing while you're in Photon Forge, right? So I could see that, because there's, as we go down a little bit, when you dodge roll, you can reduce your heat. It can vent heat, which as a result will obviously heal you with heat therapy, right? So what I'm not too sure about is if NGs are just going to be able to get a massive healing spike by going up to like 75 or like 80 or something heat, turning Photon Forge off, and then just getting a massive healing spike as they cool off. Because that could be kind of insane if that's the case. But moving down to the major masters, we have crystal configurations. The first one's going to be Storm, which your Photon Forge skill 1 now fires explosive projectiles but generates extra heat. So if we go back up to Photon Forge here, the auto attack is swing a holographic blade, and so that would instead have a bit of a ranged component to it. So it can add a little bit more range to your Photon Forge if you do need it, but at the same time you have access to your third skill, which is essentially Unload, so that's what I would use in the range department personally. And then we have Crystal Configuration Eclipse, which Corona Burst, your third ability, grants stability on each attack and creates a barrier for each target struck. Now barrier we saw is added in Path of Fire. It's just essentially an overshield. So barrier is going to be pretty good and really good for being defensive. And this doesn't say anything here about getting extra heat, so I'd say that's probably going to be the best one. So looking at the next one, Hollow Leap removes movement impairing conditions and grants super speed instead of swiftness. Now that's not bad, but free stability and barrier for each target struck, I'll be taking that, I think. Looking at the Minor Grandmaster, we have Laser's Edge, which while Photon Forge is active and you're above the heat threshold, your outgoing damage is increased by, I don't know how much, but increased damage is increased damage. So that's pretty good. And then we've got at the end, Enhanced Capacity Storage Unit, increases maximum heat capacity while above 100% heat, periodically gain might, some skills, and traits gain additional heat tiers. This is what I was talking about with the heat tiers beforehand. So this could either give you up to 200% potentially, which I could see, which would be really cool, because then you would have the entire frame of playing between 1 to 100 and then 100 to 200. So that gives you more time in the Photon Forge while you're PvEing, and so much more healing with heat therapy if you do get healed while it ticks down. You see what I mean? So you can go up to 199, turn it off, and then just get massive amounts of healing the entire time it's cooling off, you know what I mean? But if that's not the case and it only goes up to 25 or 125, then you're still kind of playing the same way you were, except when you hit that 100%, you gain periodic might and another heat tier, which kind of okay, but I would like to see 100% to 200%, because I feel like it could add a whole new layer to gameplay just in one trait. And then our last Grandmaster, there's normally one more, but I don't think it's been found yet. He didn't tell me, I don't think. But overheating now blasts damage to nearby foes, and no longer deals its initial damage to you. Heat cannot be lost except after you've overheated. Alright, so that's going to completely change the way this works, and you gain heat therapy and laser's edge after overheating. So you gain both buffs, that's the outgoing damage increase, and heat therapy being the heal that you gain back. So overheating will do damage and no longer deals the initial damage to you, which is really good, but at the same time your heat cannot be lost except after you've overheated. Alright, so there's none of that cooling down kind of thing with heat therapy anymore. By taking this, that removes that pretty much completely. And that's going to be everything that we know so far about the Holosmith. We ran on for about 20 minutes. I'm probably going to upload it as one, but that's everything that we've been able to find about the Holosmith so far. Hope you guys are hyped, and I hope I gave you guys as much information as is humanly possible, and hope you were able to figure out if you want a main Holosmith in the next expansion. Path of Fire is looking to be really damn good. Now, that's all from me. Hope you guys did enjoy and you learned something about Holosmith. And as always, take care.